All right, I'm going to start back up. We're on page 12 if you are following along on the handout. I'm going to go through about page 17 between now and 10. At 10, we'll take another break, maybe 5 after, but we'll take another break. And then when you come back, I'll give you back the test, and I'll go over how I did the test. All right, as always, if you want to argue with me about points or whatever, feel free to do that. I will tell you that as soon as class ends today, I have to pick up my daughter and take her to Rockton, Illinois for her baby shower tomorrow. So I'm not going to be around after class. All right, but if you want to send me an email or come in and complain on Monday if you don't like anything, that's your right. Okay. What's that? No, I get to go. Yeah, Charles was great about it. He was, and Brady's going to be here tomorrow, and he's going to be my surrogate, for lack of better words. He's going to be in charge tomorrow. I told Charles, listen to him. He's in charge. So. All right. These aggregate functions, the ones you're going to use 99% of the time are the ones that are shown right here. Count, max, min, average, and sum. Does it make sense to you? Please look up on the screen. These two. You can only use those with numbers. Average and sum, does that make sense? If you try to use them on non-numeric values, it's just going to give you back 0 because it doesn't know how to do it. It won't give you an error. Okay, but you can use count and max and min on numeric or non-numeric. I don't do any work with standard deviation, so I'm not going to talk about that one. I don't even know what the heck group concat is. You can look it up, but I don't know. I don't care. But what I want to show you is quickly is the count, the max, the min, the average, and the sum. Just two simple examples. The first one, again, here's all our products. So what I'm going to type in here is select count star, and I'll say as how many. Min, we'll use quantity. As, you don't need to put it in quotes if it's just a single word. Max, quantity, as maximum. Sum, quantity, as sum. Average, quantity, as AVG. From products. Move that up. Okay. So that says we have 7 products. The smallest one we have 1,000 in stock. The largest one we have 1,500. Totally in stock are 49,000, and the average is 7,000. Your numbers will be different because you've got different record information in. But please, even if you're typing, stop for a second. Does what we're doing here make sense? We're doing this just on numeric values. But I want to show you one more where we use min and max and count on non-numeric values. Again, I've heard this joke. It's not funny, but for years and years. You ever hear the joke, how do you get to Carnegie Hall? Everybody ever hear that joke? Practice, practice, practice. Okay? Somebody's in New York and they go up to a cab driver and they say, how do I get to Carnegie Hall? Practice, practice, practice. That's the only way you get to be good at this. You should be at the point right now where you're able to start putting in some of your own queries. All right? But I'm going to write a similar query, but I'm going to do this. Just taking it from the top. I'm going to say select count star. I'll keep that. That's fine. As how many? But then, let's see. Yeah, just type them in. And I'm going to say min, but I'm going to say here product code. I'm not even going to give it another name. And then I'm going to say max product code. All right, and I'm going to say, that's enough. I'll have to do one more because I put the comma in there. Just to show you that nothing will happen when I do average product code. and when I do sum of product code. So these last two lines that I'm putting in here, they're stupid. All right, so if I put in those, notice what I get. My smallest name is Peck, my largest name is Pen. The average doesn't make sense because it's a non-numeric field. The sum doesn't make sense, and there's 7 of them. So you can use count, count star, min, and max on either numeric or non-numeric fields. But sum and average you can only use on numeric fields. And I don't know, I mean, I know what standard deviation is. To me, I don't know how you could use standard deviation on a non-numeric field. It doesn't make any sense to me. I'm not saying you could do it, all right? But I don't know why you'd ever want to do it, okay? So those are just 2 examples of that. And like I said, these 2 lines, this average and sum, they make no sense. The good news is, unlike in C#, where if something doesn't make sense, it throws an exception, this doesn't throw an exception. All right? You saw this already, but I can say, for example, select 7 divided by 2. Okay, you don't have to do that. It just comes back with 3.5, right? But if I say select 7 divided by 0, notice it just comes back as no. It doesn't give me an error message. That's good news. So even if the system doesn't understand it, it's not going to, throw some kind of an error where it stops working. All right, so that's the aggregate stuff. If you remember earlier, I showed you this. You don't have to type this in. In fact, let me just do a select star from products again, so you can see all of the data. But if you remember earlier, we did this, where we said select count star from products, and then we said group by product code. So we did this earlier. Remember that? And it came back with 4 and 3? Okay. When we do queries and we put a where in there, we're putting in criteria, right? So if I said, I want everybody, I don't know, where your salary is greater than $100,000, I want this to happen. That's criteria, correct? When you're using group by, if you want to put in criteria, you don't use where, you use a clause called having. Okay? So I could say select count star from products just like I did. So I'm going to write in the same query, but this time I'm going to say having count star, I think this will work, but we're going to find out. Having count star greater than 3. See that? So I said only show me the people where the count is greater than 3. But I didn't use where, I used having. Now I'm going to tell you this, and I don't want to confuse you even more, and this is not in your handout. It is possible for you to use group with where. You can use group without having. You can use group with having. You can use having without group by. You can use having with or without where. But that's fairly complex to do that. So what the author has shown you in here is the most straightforward. You've ever heard of the Pareto principle? It is the 20% of the stuff you're going to use 80% of the time. All right? All right, so that was the having. You can also use roll-up. What the heck is roll-up? All right, well then let's take a look at what roll-up is. See if they don't have a great example of it, so but we'll use one anyway. All right, I'm going to put in the same query that we had earlier, this select count star from products, group by product code. All right, and so I want to make sure I'm giving you the right syntax. I think it's just with roll-up. All right, and then at the end here, I'm going to say with roll-up. Anybody want to guess what the 7 is? 4 plus 3. Now, you could have said 2 plus 5, and it would have been actually correct, but it wouldn't have made any sense right there. When you do a roll-up like that, it adds together everything that you have. So I do want you to see this because I want to run it one more time, but I want to run it like this. So I want it to show me the product code, followed by account, followed by the group by, followed by the with rollup. Any idea why there's null there? We don't have a product code that's a combination of the two of them, do we? We just have the individual product codes. The system doesn't know how to show this, so rather than leaving it blank, which means blank, we puts in null, which means I don't know what that is. All right? So again, you can use roll-ups. That's on the bottom of page 13 of the handout, and it's on the top of page 14 in the handout. All right? Now, looking up on the screen here, everybody please. Next is modifying data with update. I want to show you two modifications, two ways of making modifications. All right? I'm going to go back, and again, I'm going to put in select star from products. Now, am I right in assuming that you all have that first record that's in here? Am I right? And yours, does yours look like mine? You have 1001 for the product ID, pen for the code, pen red, 5001.23. You all have that. All right, we're going to change that. Why? Because we just got an order in, and now they screwed up, and we meant to order 5,000 more of those. We accidentally ordered 50,000 more of those. So now we should have 55,000 in stock, which is way too many. So we're going to drop the price to just half price because we're going to have a sale this weekend. Does that make sense? So that's what we want to do. So we want to update just the red pen. So we have 55,000 in stock, and they're going to be 64 cents. When we're updating, again, the key thing to use here is that product ID. All right? So that's what we're going to write now, is a query to do that. So I'm going to say update, and then the name of the table you want to update, which is products, and then I'm going to say set. So what I want to do is I want to set quantity equal to 55,000, comma, and then you only use the word set once, but I also want to set price equal to 0.64. Okay? Don't if you put that in, don't hit enter. If I put a semicolon on the end, does it make sense to you? I'm going to change the quantity for each one to 55,000, and I'm going to change the price for each one to 64 cents. That might not be bad with only 6 or 7 records. Imagine you had 6,000 or 7,000 records. There's no undo here. So if you did it, you screwed it up. All right? So you'd want to come back here and say where, and again, you should always be basing it off of the primary key. So where the product ID is equal to 1001. Now look at that, semicolon. Does that make sense? Update that table, set that field equal to that value, set that field equal to that value where that criteria is met. So if I hit enter, please look at the result. It says rows matched 1, changed 1. That's what you want to see if you're only changing 1. If you forgot to put the where clause in there, it'll say rows matched 6 or 7, depending on how many records you have, changed 6 or 7. But now if I come back again and I select star from products, notice now my pen read 55,064, which is exactly what I wanted. And you'll notice that when I did that, if I have multiple fields, there's only one set statement, but I have to separate each one, a comma at the end, except for the last one. If I only want to do one field, so let's say that the price on pen red, oh, it shouldn't have been, we changed it, and it's 64 cents. Somebody said, no, half of that is actually 63 cents, as an example. So again, we could update products, set Now I'll have to put the word set here. So update products, set the price equal to, in this case, I said, no, we want it to be 63 cents. No comma on the end, where product ID equals 1001. Again, one changed, and if I select my star from products, now it's 63 cents. Does that make sense? So if you have just a single field, no commas. Yes.
You don't have to show me this, but say you're doing it like you said, where you got a new order of 50,000. Could you have done set quantity plus equals 50,000?
No, it's. Can you do that? You can only do that if you're working programmatically, to my knowledge. We're not technically programming right now. If you were doing it programmatically, yes. All right, but is there a way to do it? There might be. I don't know of it. I don't know of one that you can do just with these commands. All right. But just for the hell of it, we'll try it anyway, because we got 55,000 in there right now. So let's update products. Let's set quantity equal to. In fact, I think this is what you're saying. Let's try. I'll put it in parentheses just to be sure. Quantity minus 10,000. I think that's the kind of thing you were asking. All right. Where product ID equals that. Well, said it did it. So did it knock it down to 45,000? Because I've never tried doing that before. It did. So yes, you can. All right. I've never done it like that before. I'm glad you asked the question. So what we did was we actually did some math in here. Thinking about it, I guess there'd be no reason you couldn't. I just never did it like that before. All right. All right. Now we just looked at modifying data. So that's in here, or in your handout. It's on pages 13 and 14, or I'm sorry, yeah, I guess page 14. Then on the bottom of page 14 and going on to page 15 is deleting. Same kind of thing. All right. So let's say that this record right here, do you all have, when you select star from products, all right, do you all have a record 1005? All right, that's going to be the one. For whatever reason, that pen is, or pencil is being discontinued. So we're going to say delete from products. All right, please look up on the screen. If I hit semicolon right now and enter, every record's gone. You can't get them back. Oh yeah, you can. You can type them all in again. Okay, but you'd want to come in here and say where, again, base that off of always the primary key. Primary key equals, what did we say? It would be 1005, at least in my case. All right, and it said one row affected. But if I do my select star again, notice what's gone. 1005 is now gone. Okay? To my knowledge, you cannot, if you keep using auto increment, that primary key is now gone. 1005 is now not available to you anymore. Does that make sense? Now, I've had people who said, well, I manually put it in, and I was able to, don't do that. If you're starting to use something that exists in the software that automatically increments for you, then always do it that way. Don't say, well, I got it to work. I put a hack in here and I got it to work. That's ridiculous to do something like that. I don't care what anybody tells you. It's not right. You know, I'm not saying they're wrong. I'm not saying they're dumb. I'm saying it's literally just not a right way to do things. So it's delete from the table name. And if you don't put a where clause, it deletes everything. Okay? Now, I'm not going to say this, but I could have said where product ID less than 1005. And then it would have deleted 4 of them. Does that make sense? All right, so I can put criteria in there if I want to, need to, have to. All right? All right. Loading, exporting data to and from a text file. I will tell you, okay, that this is what I did this morning, because I didn't prepare anything for today, okay? Went home last night and basically did not much of anything. Met my daughter for dinner and came home and didn't do anything. So I came in this morning and I created this file. You may or may not know this. You can grab this stuff, just right mouse click on it, and you can drop it into, don't drop it right into your MySQL, but if you drop it into Notepad, then you can just copy it right from there into MySQL. All right, but I did this. First thing I want you to notice is if you look here, these \n's, though that's a line return, probably what you think it would be. The comma is the separator. Does that make sense? So this is a CSV, comma separated variable or comma separated value file. Okay? And so what do we have? We've got a product code, PEC. We've got a name, pencil in the first one. We've got, or pencil 3B for the first one. We've got a quantity, 500. We've got a price, 52. Make sense? I followed that. I did that. I saved it in this file. I just threw it on the desktop. Then I went in and ran the command right here that they tell you to run in for from MySQL for Windows. I put in that command. I changed the path, so mine was on my C drive, and it didn't like it. It didn't understand what it meant. So, after trying it twice and double checking, make sure I didn't type in anything wrong, I said, pardon my French, I said, screw it, I'm going on to the next one. So I did that. And it does say here what you need to do, but it's the stuff I just mentioned for you. All right. Then I tried the utility program right here. This said you can also do it. Notice this is a TSV, which means instead of separating things with commas, you use tabs. All right. So I did this, ran that command, except again, my path was different. It didn't like that one either. Okay, so you can try that, and if you get yours to work, let me know what I did wrong. That's fine. But I don't really care, because I want to show you a better way of doing it and what I did. All right? And that is, now this one right here, this is kind of a neat one. You may or may not realize it looking at the one that's in blue right there. What that does is this says, I want you to take what's in my products table and I want you to go the other way. I want you to export that into a comma separated variable file. So take my database, and when it makes those CSV files, you may or may not be aware of this, even when it's got a .csv for the extension, it makes those Excel files. So it made an Excel file with everything that was in the products table. And just to show you, get rid of that. Not sure exactly even where I put it, but I think it's in here. Yep. There it is. Okay. So you can, I had no problem exporting, I had problems importing. You can also import into PHPMyAdmin. I've been able to do that with no problem. So we're going to try that when we get into the PHPMyAdmin stuff next week. All right. What I did was I got a script to work. In fact, I took this script that's right here and kind of put it onto steroids. What I mean is I put a lot of stuff in it because I want you to see this. Now, you can type that in, you can highlight it, you can do whatever, or if you want, what I'll do is if you want to, I'll be more than happy to send you, not that, but I'll send you this script because I want to show you everything that I did. And this stuff is, let's see, that stuff's not needed. Okay, so this is what I did. Starting from the top. Again, anything with minus, as Amin can now tell you, they're comments. So they're skipped by the system. So, but I put those in as documentation, okay? So I dropped the products to table. You go, I don't have one of those. But I said drop it only if it exists. All right? Now, if I try dropping a table that doesn't exist, I don't get an error, but I do get a warning. So if you type in share warnings, it'll say something like cannot drop table that does not exist. Okay? So I told it to drop the table. Then, anybody want to guess what this thing does? I'm going to get rid of the comments so you can't see. I can't. Okay, that's what it does. It says basically clone or copy the products 1 table into a products 2 table. Does that make sense? It copies everything. It copies the field names. It copies all the data. What it doesn't copy is the schema. What does that mean? What that means is since it doesn't copy the schema, it doesn't know that product ID is a primary key. It doesn't know to use auto increment. So you have to go back in and use alter table to add that stuff back in if you want to do it that way. So this says drop a table if it exists, create a new table by copying one, run a select to make sure that it all works, then delete all the data from it. I want to delete all the data. Verify that all the data was removed. Then this right here that you see, that is what they did right here. That's that file. But in order to do that, if you follow their steps and you do this, okay, if you say insert into products, that's inserting into a brand new or into the existing table. That will work. All right, so I can insert that into my products table. How do I know that? Well, I'm going to grab all of it. I'm not going to delete from products. I'm just going to grab this. Copy. And I've got a products and I've got a products 2 table. All right, but I'm just going to, I can always get rid of it later. Okay, so select star from products. See how I've added all that new stuff? It's these last 4 records what I just added. And since I told it to start with 2001, then I put null, null, null. It knew then to go 2002, 2003, 2004. So if you run it like that, if you do what they said, this is going to remove all the data you currently have in your table. And then you're going to replace it with this data. But if you leave that line out, it leaves in your old data and it just adds that stuff to it. Does that make sense? All right. Now I'm going to hold off on this more than one table. This is where we're going to start on Monday. All right. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to jump up to the next section. It's going to be a little confusing because some of the stuff in the next section assumes you went through this. But some of the stuff in this section assumes you know stuff that's in the next section. All right. So I'm going to jump up to section 4, which on your, I think it's around page 25 if you are looking on your handout. Yeah. It starts on page 25. We're going to look at that. All right. So the first thing they talk about here is primary key. And I'm going to try to show it to you like this. I'm going to come back and show you that this thing that I just put in here, this right here, this script. But I'm going to change everything that says products 2, which is a table I have. I'm going to change it all to products 3. I'm going to create a new table. All right? So I'm going to grab all of this stuff and I'm going to copy it to the clipboard. All right? I'm going to copy it. Then I'm going to go into MySQL. It used to be in MySQL what you had to do was you had to right mouse click, all right, and choose paste. Now, as soon as you right mouse click, it puts everything in there. Okay, so it's all in there. So I now have this thing in there that I just put in, okay, and it looks pretty much like it worked, which surprises me, but it looks like it did anyway. All right. So that's how fast I can throw a bunch of stuff in there. So I can go, if I'm running the same kind of queries every day, I can put it into a file and run the file every day. Now, normally when you run the file like this, you save it as a file with a .sql extension. Then you bring the file in. All right? It's not mandatory. I just showed you that it wasn't mandatory. All right. If I look at my products, and I'll just use this products, I'll use the products table, that's fine. Select star from products. And please look up on the screen. I want one of you, anyone, to tell me, will this query work? Yes, no, and why? Insert into, and I'm violating some rules here, but products, values, and I'm going to put in here 1001 pen, new pen. 1,001. Is that going to work? Yes, no, why?
No.
Why?
Shouldn't aware.
No, that's not aware. So you gave me the right answer, but just the wrong reason.
There's already
Doesn't
one.
it have to have the name of the group that it goes into, even if it's...
No, it doesn't have to have the name of the group. Go ahead.
There's already one.
You've already got something with a 1001, don't you? So notice the error that I get. Duplicate entry for primary. It's letting you know that the primary key must be unique. Because when I tried to add a primary key, where I already had a primary key by that number, it gave me an error. All right? And again, I mentioned this before, but I want to say it one more time. When we removed record 5 from here, technically it's gone. I think that we can do a hack and put it back in there. I don't want to do this, and you shouldn't do this. See that? But it put it in there. So now if I run this again, it's got 5 back in there. You shouldn't do that.
Why shouldn't you do it?
You shouldn't do it because auto increment says the system is keeping track. It literally logs it in one of those files, how it's putting the stuff in there. What you've told it is, now the way that I count is 1,001, 1,002, 1,003, 1,004, 1,005, 1,006, 1,008. Oh wait, but there's no 1,005 anymore. 2001, 2002, 2003, 2004, 1,005. All right? You just shouldn't do that. Now, do companies do that? Of course they do. All right, I don't have no idea. I'm sure like you guys do, I have some kind of an ID number here. I don't even know what it is. But let's say that my ID number is 1005. The day will come when I retire, I die, I get replaced, whatever. Now, what's to stop them from giving somebody else a 1005? Nothing. They could do it. But in data, which is what this is, you shouldn't do that. All right. In fact, you said why shouldn't you? When you go through and you've got log files and stuff like that in there, what you're basically saying is, I have 2 products that have the same ID, which technically is illegal. So what you're doing is you're saying something that is technically illegal, you're using a hack to make it legal.
So if you do delete something though, and you want to add something else back into it, but you want it to be in the right sequence order.
It won't be in the right sequence, or you should never ever change primary keys once they're set for any reason. Never. Why screw up? It doesn't matter. Then you live with a screw up. I'm not saying you can't do that. You shouldn't do it.
Does that include deleting them? You shouldn't do it.
No, you can delete them. If we're not going to make that pen anymore, you want to delete it, you delete it. But then that number is just gone. That's all. All right? And I mean, your question was very valid. It's like, well, you just showed you can't, so why shouldn't you? Because there are people who argue that you should. Because then you're not wasting anything that way. But the idea is, for no other reason, for historical sake and for the sake of logging it, you should never allow 2 different products to have the same ID for any reason.
Yeah, I understand why now, but just wondering if there was a way to fix it back into.
No. I mean, you could technically create a new table, remove this record, create a new table, but then, I mean, there's a lot of companies that even though, you're going to have like their company ID might be some real weird combination, X3Y7JLB, okay, something like that. And you could go and give them another one, but there are people that work for that company that know that number, and there are going to be scripts and programs that depend on that number. And if you change it, you can totally screw up the company. It's not hard to do. All right. Bless you. Typically a primary key is just a single field. Okay? And it's called, some books call it a simple primary key. Sometimes you combine two fields together or more into a primary key. And that's called either a concatenated primary key or a composite primary key. Depends on the book you read. This book calls it a composite. All right? Now let's talk foreign key. You mean foreign key? What the heck is that? Well, now I get to show you my example. All right? I realize this is kind of small, but hopefully it's big enough where everybody in here can read it. This is all made up. I mean, you don't have to type in anything, but I just want to explain something to you. And that is, I've got an employees table. Every employee has an ID, a social security number, a first name, a last name, an address, a city, a state, a zip, and a cell phone. So every employee has that information that you see right there. Does that make sense? We also have a departments table. And every department has a department ID and a department name. So I created this, and then I put in 3 employees, and I put in 3 departments. Does that make sense? So this says, that's my employee ID, there's my first name, there's my last name. I didn't put in social, I added social security number later, and I'll explain why I added it in just a second. But employee ID, first name, last name, address, city, state, zip, phone number, and department ID. Does all that make sense? Okay? And same thing in here. So if I come through here, right now, I'm going to remove that for now. Right now, when you look at this, right now, there's no way to relate these 2 tables to one another. There is no field in common between the 2 tables. I'm not asking you that. I'm telling you that. There is no field in common. All right? But if, when you look at it, I even asked this on the tape this morning. Do departments consist of employees, or do employees consist of departments? As far as I know, departments consist of employees, right? So what I want to do is I want to take the primary key from this field, from this table, and I want to add it over here. Now I've got a field in common between the 2 tables. We're going to start with this next Monday, but now I can say connect. So if my boss comes in and says, hey, I need a report with everybody's first name, last name, and the department they work for. Now I can do that by combining the information from the 2 tables. That's what we're going to do on Monday. All right? Since we took the primary key from one table and we put it in another table, and the only reason we put that field in there was so we could relate those 2 tables, this field is known as a foreign key. It's technically only needed, that blue thing, the only reason that that's needed in that table is so we can relate the 2 tables together. You could say, that I get it. Why didn't you just put department ID and department name in the same table? You could have, but that's not the right way to do things. All right? Now, what you want to get when you use this, again, that's called a foreign key. The key thing about a foreign key is you want to preserve what's known as, this is another referential, I think that's right, integrity. You want to preserve referential integrity. And a real simple definition, no orphan records. If you don't know what that means, I'm going to explain it right now. All right? Would you agree, looking at this example, 122 right here, that no one right now works in receiving? Would everybody agree with that? So if I come in and I try to remove the receiving table, it's not a problem. Boom, it's gone. But now I come in and I decide I want to remove Department 2. All right? And Department 2 is shipping. But I can't do that because Sandy and Taylor both work for shipping. So if I was able to remove shipping from here, I'd have 2 records that didn't relate to another table. They would be what's referred to as orphan records. All right? That would mean that I'm not preserving referential integrity. Okay? And I say this stuff, and especially those of you, and I know there's at least 1 or 2 of you with young kids, I'm going to say stuff and it's going to sound, ugh, why would you talk like that? But you can look at it this way, that you can't kill the parent if the parent has any kids. All right? And that's typically department would be the parent table, and the child table here would be employees. All right, and that's just the way that it's set up. Now, when you do this, and this is explained in your handout, you can set up different restrictions or what are called constraints. And notice delete and update, okay? When you have this, if you use restrict, the system will look and it'll say, oh, you want to remove the parents? It has kids. Can't do it. It just refuses. Oh, you want to change the parent? The parent has kids. You can't do it. So if you use either restrict, all right, or you use no action, it means don't allow it to happen. Okay? If you use cascade, if you kill the parents, kill the kids. So if you remove the parents, remove the child records. That's what it says. Now, somebody asked before about updating the primary key, and I said you shouldn't, but sometimes people do it anyway. What cascade update says is if you do change the parent, so if I change that number, maybe instead of having the number 1, I wanted 001 or whatever, if you change the parent, automatically change the child. So update it. Cascade means, let it flow. So if something happens to the parent, make it happen to the child. If you use set null, that means if you change the parent, set the child to null, which is unknown. So those are the 3 things that you can do with that. All right? And the last thing that's discussed in here, good, because it's time for a break, are indexes. Okay? If we had our C# books with us, let's say it's the first day of class in C#, and I say 80% of your grade is going to depend on how you do in arrays in this class. All right? And Brady says, geez, arrays, I don't know what the hell those are. So he turns to the back of the book, he looks in the index, and he finds where arrays are. He says, well, they're on these 3 pages. So he goes and he looks. So it's a way for him to go and look and see where something is. The table of contents is sort of the same thing, but normally the table of contents is much more general or generic than an index is. So I'm bringing it up because an index here is kind of the same thing. When you index something, you make it available internally to MySQL. So if I'm constantly running queries where I'm using the same fields all the time in my queries, I'll typically set up an index, just a regular index on those fields, because it'll run faster. Again, we don't care because we're talking about 6 or 7 records with one table. If we were talking about 60 or 70 million records, indexes would be unbelievably important because they speed up the process. That's the good news. The bad news is cost and space. The cost means every time you update the table, you've got to update every index. It's just like if I added a bunch, let's say that I added I've got my C# book, and now I decide to add a new chapter smack dab into the middle of the book. Wouldn't you agree that anything that happened after that for arrays would have to be renumbered? I'd have to do the same thing here. All right? So that's the cost. Plus, the indexes are saved. They're saved in one of these internal files, so they take up space. All right. You can have index on just a single column, on all sorts of columns, and this is an important one right here. I want you to see this. If I went back to this example that I showed you, this thing, I wouldn't want Social Security number to be a primary key because, as we said before, that's an intelligible field. It's not an unintelligible field. But I'd want to make sure that each Social Security number was unique. So when I created it, I could put the word unique after it. Then if I did that, in fact, I think I did this on the products 2 table. I'm not positive, but I might have changed it since then. So no, I did change it. This used to be the name I made unique. Let's see if I can remember how to do that. In fact, let's go back to the products table. All right, so if I tell it to alter table products add unique to name. I'm not sure if that's the right syntax or not. It says 0 rows affected, so that's probably not the right syntax. How do I know? I run this again. I run describe. Oh, it did. See how it says UNI right there? All right. Now, select star from products. I think everybody'd agree. Okay. I have a name in there that's called new pen. So I'm going to try to insert a new record. I'm going to insert into products, values, and I'll put null for the primary key. I'll put pen, that's fine. For the product code, for the name, I'm going to put in new pen, even though I already have it in there. And for quantity, I'll put in 1111. For price, I'll put in $1.11. All right. Unknown column. Because I put a dollar sign in there. All right. It says I have an error. So let's see. Null, pen, new pen, 1111. Responds near at line 1. Insert into products values. Now, there we go. See that duplicate entry? Because it was unique. And I tried to take something that was unique and make it non-unique. All right. So on Monday, we will pick it up, but we're going to pick it up on part 3. We're going to add another table, and then we're going to combine information together from the two tables. Does that make sense? All right. And that'll take most of the period. All right. So it is 10:02. Let's come back at 10:15. When you come back, I'm going to give you a hard copy of your test, and I'm going to show you the key that I wrote. All right. We'll do that either till 11:55 or until we're done.